As immigration enforcement has increased, the American Civil Liberties Union has been working to protect people's rights and hold agents accountable. The group is also keeping bystanders and protesters safe and informed as people come together to make their voices heard in Boston and beyond. Joining us now is Carol Rose, the executive director of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Excited to talk about this topic because first things first, how is the ACLU responding to the federal immigration operation happening in Minneapolis?
Right. Well, so first of all, I just have to say, I think like everyone else, we're responding with a mixture of grief, anger, and frankly, hope. And I'll talk about hope at the end. But, we have an office in all 50 states, and so the ACLU is ready on the front lines wherever these surges happen.
How do those efforts impact people here at home in Massachusetts?
Right. So, first of all, let me just say a minute. We have to pause for a minute and talk about the grief that we're all here feeling as a society, to the senseless killings of people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. But also, there's been more than 9 people shot by ICE just since September, and thousands of people are being separated, children being detained. We have to acknowledge that grief as a starting point. But then we turn from that to our response, to how we're fueled by anger. And there's so many things that we can do to get ready here, and we'd better be getting ready here in Massachusetts, because there's no reason to think that this administration isn't going to be coming to Massachusetts and doing the same thing here that they've been doing in Lewiston and Portland, Maine, in LA, in Chicago, in Portland, Oregon, and then of course in Minneapolis. So we're getting ready here on a whole range of issues, and there are so many things that ordinary people can do to make sure that our communities are going to be safe in the event of this kind of a surge.
We do want to get to what everybody can do, but I want to know how you're getting ready and how you're working with state leaders to protect Massachusetts communities.
Right. So the ACLU, we're a nonpartisan organization. Now, this is not a right or left issue. This is a pro-democracy issue. But we work in the courts, so we have filed lawsuits. Certainly in Minneapolis, the ACLU has filed lawsuits against the unlawful police practices. We're working in the legislature, and this last week we saw members of the legislature who were introducing bills. We saw the governor issuing both legislative and executive authorities to try to take actions to make sure that we don't have these renegade federal agents coming in our communities and violating the state laws that we have to protect people's civil rights. And so we're working in the courts, we're working in the legislature, and then we're online, and frankly we're in the streets as peaceful protesters raise their voices and step up and show up to make sure that our elected leaders know that when they protect our rights, we have their back.
I want to talk about rights, right? Because during immigration enforcement operations, what are the rights for people who are observing what's happening, bystanders?
Right. So first of all, it's so important that people show up and bear witness. And also, we all have a phone now, right? So we can actually take video. So you do have a right to record the police in their performance, or ICE or anybody else in their performance of their duties. What you may not do and need to be mindful to do, you cannot interfere. So you have to, if the police say take a step back, you take a step back and say it. I'm taking a step back because you told me to, right? You also have to obey all of the other laws, so you can't trespass or block traffic or do the other things that would otherwise be illegal. So the most important thing is that people are peaceful, that they obey the laws, but that they show up and they bear witness and they take those recordings, because that becomes incredibly important evidence in these cases. So like for the ACLU of Massachusetts, when we were defending the rights of the Tufts graduate student, Rumeysa Ozturk, it was so important that her kidnapping by ICE agents was captured on a phone or on a video. And so that kind of video capture becomes incredibly important down the road when we defend people's rights against human rights abuses.
Well, can I ask you this? What questions can witnesses even ask when someone is being detained, when they are recording or they are seeing something happen?
Well, they can try to get the names of any agents, the license plate numbers of agents, these kinds of things, so that again, it creates an evidentiary trail, so that when human rights lawyers from the ACLU or other groups step in, or district attorneys from the state step in to defend people's rights or to hold ICE agents to account, we have that kind of evidence. And for the most part, and get the name of the person who's being taken too, so that we can find them, because a lot of people are sort of frankly being disappeared into the immigration detention system. So trying to gather information, trying to gather video evidence, but not interfering and not violating any of the sort of daily laws of trespass, things like that. Those are the ways that people can do this, be a part of showing up. Nobody can do everything, but all of us can do something. And bearing witness and showing up are two of the things that we can do.
Let's talk about protesting, right? What would you want people to know before they go out and protest in Massachusetts?
Right. So when you want to go out and protest in Massachusetts, the first thing I want to say is thank you. It is so important that people show up. Again, it messages to our elected leaders at both the state and federal level that people really care, that democracy is popular, that we are patriotic. And that's, we in Massachusetts 250 years ago, we started a revolution against a king. We continue to play that role today. So I think showing up is important. Number two, it's really important, again, that you comply with the laws. If it's possible wherever you are to get a permit, try to get a permit, and the permitting systems are complicated, but try to do that. And then again, don't trespass, don't commit violence, all these, don't interfere. These are the kinds of things that people can do to make sure that they can peacefully protest and do good and not get into trouble. But we want good trouble.
Good trouble. All right, Kara Rose, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight on this. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, still ahead, staying informed while taking care of yourself. A mental health expert offers crucial tips during this difficult time.